Pay close attention to this because it could affect millions of Americans in 2026, and far too few people are talking about it in a clear, practical way. We have a couple of fresh updates connected to the infamous $2,000 stimulus check, or the $2,000 dividend payment, as the president likes to describe it, including who he says he wants to focus these payments on and when he believes they could realistically be sent out. In a moment, I'm going to show you two short clips. Together, they add up to about a minute of video. One clip focuses on who the payments would be aimed at. The other clip focuses on timing. I want to be transparent with you up front. The first clip is difficult to hear because the audio is rough and there's a lot of background noise. The full version is longer, but I'm only sharing a short segment because the sound quality makes it hard to follow. The second clip is very clear and you can hear exactly what's being said without strain. Before I play them, let me say this. I know many of you are counting on me to keep bringing you updates as they show up from the president, the administration, and other high-profile voices who comment on this topic. I also know a lot of people watching are on fixed incomes, low-income, or middle-income households, and you're not watching this out of curiosity. You're watching because you're feeling the pressure. I see the struggles people share, and I understand why this matters. So whenever new information comes out in a way that you can actually see or hear directly, I'm going to bring it to you so you can judge it for yourself. Now, with clip 1, the main point is about who he says these payments would be directed toward. Again, listen closely. If you need to rewind it and hear it again, do that. The environment in that clip is noisy and the audio quality isn't good. Clip 2 is the opposite. It's clear, loud, and easy to understand, and it's the one that's making many people scratch their heads because of how the exchange plays out. All right, here are the clips. In the first clip, the message being conveyed is that the $2,000 payments would be aimed at low and moderate income people and middle income people, and specifically not focused on the rich. That statement, in one form or another, has been repeated in multiple interviews and referenced in other public remarks. I'm not asking you to take anyone's word for it blindly. I'm showing you what's being said, and I'm keeping the record clear so there's less confusion later. The second clip is where timing comes into the conversation, and it's also where some people feel confused by the back and forth. The question that gets asked is framed as, "You promised $2,000 checks," and the response comes back in a way that sounds like pushback on the wording. Some people interpret it as confusion. Some interpret it as resisting the idea of a promise. I'm going to be careful here and keep this grounded in what we can actually observe. The word promise is a very specific word. A person can talk about an idea, promote an idea, or float a plan, and still avoid framing it as a promise. That may be why the exchange sounds the way it does. It doesn't automatically mean the idea isn't being discussed. It means the language is being contested in the moment. That said, clip 2 also includes a line about timing, and the timing that's mentioned is toward the end of the year. Naturally, people hear that and immediately wonder what that really means. Does toward the end of the year mean October? Does it mean late fall? Does it mean just before the calendar flips? That's the part that creates a lot of questions because it's not a specific date, it's a broad window. Now, I want to address one of the most common questions I keep seeing, especially from those of you on fixed income benefits. People ask daily, are fixed income beneficiaries included? Based on the way this has been framed in these remarks, the focus being described is income-based. When someone says low income or middle income, fixed income households often fall into those income categories simply because that's the nature of many fixed income situations. Nothing in what was said indicates that fixed income beneficiaries are being excluded as a group. The focus being described is about income levels, not about punishing people on benefits or cutting them out. If you're on a fixed income and your household income is low or middle, there's no obvious reason you would be excluded based on the way the idea is being presented. That's why I keep saying, if this happens, it appears to be tied to income. At the same time, I'm not going to oversell certainty where certainty doesn't exist. Right now, a lot of this is still in the realm of talk, remarks, and we'll see. The biggest word in this whole conversation is still a very simple one, if. If it becomes official, if it moves from comments into formal writing, if it becomes an actual process that is clearly defined, that's where the difference is made. Talk is not the same thing as a finalized plan, and that's why I keep bringing you the clips and updates as they come. I want you to see what's being said, not rumors, not screenshots out of context, not recycled posts, just direct remarks you can evaluate. Now let's talk about the timing issue in a realistic way, because timing matters. If people feel like something was discussed publicly and then nothing happens for a long time, frustration builds. That's not a political statement. That's just human nature. If the gap between the talk and the action becomes too wide, people stop believing. They stop listening. They stop waiting. And if morale drops enough, it becomes much harder for any message to land later, even if money eventually shows up. People will still accept help, of course, but the narrative impact changes when timing feels off. So from a purely strategic standpoint, if this is ever going to happen, timing would likely be chosen carefully. People already understand that major public moves often get timed around major public moments. That doesn't require conspiracy thinking, it's just how messaging tends to work. And because timing is so important, waiting too long can backfire. If nothing is in motion and people feel ignored for too long, irritation grows. If action happens earlier, it can calm that tension. That's why I keep saying, if this is real, it needs to move into official written form sooner rather than later. Not tomorrow, not next week, not necessarily next month, but soon enough that people can see there is an actual process taking shape. And yes, you may hear debate about whether something like this could be done via executive action. Some people say yes, some people say no. That debate exists, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But even if something is theoretically possible, the real question is whether it will actually be executed and what the final details would look like. That's why I keep my focus on what is directly said, what is directly written, and what turns into official documentation. Now, I also want to shift for a moment into something practical and urgent for many of you, because we're early in January 2026, and I've seen a flood of comments from people on Medicare running into problems that are costing them real money. People are saying things like, I went to my doctor and got a big bill because they're not in network anymore. Or, I tried to make an appointment and suddenly my doctor isn't in network. Or, I went to the pharmacy and my prescriptions cost way more than they used to. These are not small inconveniences. These are budget-shaking surprises, and they're happening right now. So let me say this clearly. Just because we're in the new year does not automatically mean you are locked in with no options. Depending on your specific situation, you may still have flexibility and choices within Medicare plans. I don't know your exact plan, your county, your providers, or your prescription list, so I can't pretend I know what you personally should do. But I can tell you this. It is worth checking your options if you're suddenly seeing higher bills, higher prescription prices, or network disruptions. That's why I keep urging people to reach out to Chapter. If you're on Medicare, do yourself a favor and make the call. See what options you actually have. It's better to check now than to learn the hard way after a huge bill lands in your lap. I've seen too many people surprised by, whoops, not in network anymore, and then the bill hits and it's a bad situation. If you've already had that happen, you understand how fast stress can spiral. And believe me, I'm not speaking about medical bills like they're theoretical. I just dealt with a big one myself. I went to urgent care recently for shingles. It was miserable and it was expensive. The bill was almost $3,000. Not fun. Medical costs can come out of nowhere. And when they do, they don't ask if your budget is ready. That's why saving money where you can, especially on coverage and prescriptions, matters. If you call and talk to them, I want you to come back and leave a comment with the keyword chapter. That's the keyword I search for. Use the word chapter in your comment and I'll be able to find it easily. Leave it on any video, it doesn't matter which one. Just include the word chapter so it gets picked up. When I collect those comments, I can share them as proof that people are actually getting help and finding better options. Over time, that becomes a resource for the community because it shows real outcomes, not just claims. And let me say something else because some people misunderstand what this is. This is not a sales pitch. This is not me trying to push something you don't need. The reason I talk about it is simple. It's free to get help and free help matters, especially when budgets are tight. I love free. If you can get support without paying extra, why wouldn't you at least check? If your doctor suddenly becomes out of network or your prescriptions suddenly jump, you deserve to know whether there's a better plan available for your situation. They have access to a huge number of plan options, and they've helped thousands of people in this community. And yes, collectively, people have reported saving serious money. That's not a small thing. That's groceries, utilities, prescriptions, rent, peace of mind. Those savings matter in real life. If you're thinking, But didn't I have to do this before the end of the year? Not necessarily. It depends. That's why the call matters. Your situation might allow flexibility. Another person's might not. But you won't know until you check. And it's better to check now than to assume you have no options and then pay for that assumption with higher bills. Now, circling back to the $2,000 payment conversation, here's where I stand. I will keep you posted. Anytime there are new remarks, new video clips, new official statements, or anything written that moves this from talk into real process, I will bring it to you quickly. I will keep showing you the source material so you can see and hear it for yourself, not filtered through someone else's agenda. And if this kind of update helps you, do me a favor and subscribe so you don't miss the next one when it drops. Subscribing is the simplest way to stay connected, especially when information shifts quickly and rumors spread even faster. Also, share this with someone who needs it. If you have a friend or family member on a fixed income, on Medicare, or worried about possible payments, sharing can help them feel less alone and more informed. If you're new here, subscribe now so you're in the loop as soon as new updates come in. And if you've been here a while, make sure you're still subscribed so you don't get lost in the shuffle. A lot of people rely on these updates, and staying subscribed makes it easier to keep the community informed. One more time, if you call and get help with your Medicare options, leave a comment with the word chapter so I can find it and include it when I compile community feedback. It helps others see real experiences, and it helps people feel confident taking action. And finally, please subscribe and share. Subscribe so you stay updated, share so someone else can benefit. I look forward to reading your comments, especially after you make that call and check your options. Enjoy your day, take care of yourself, and I'll keep bringing you the updates as soon as they appear.